Hey guys, Jordy and Jay from Seven Eagle Group, and we are just so honored and thrilled today to be talking with Aaron Harper, a 5-year sergeant, retired sergeant from the Corps, who has spent a really distinguished career not only in the military but afterwards, working for a variety of companies and most recently at Atrium Health. So honored to talk with you today, and thanks, Aaron, for spending a few minutes with us.
Yeah, appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
You got it. So do you mind, let's start out, do you mind just giving everyone a little bit of an overview of your service in the Marine Corps and what you did, and what you got out of serving and how that helped you specifically in your civilian career?
Oh, sure. Well, I happen to be 5th generation Marine. So my Uncle Rick, he was a Marine sergeant in Vietnam. Served a couple of tours there. My great uncle Cecil was a Marine in Chosin Reservoir. He got out as a sergeant. His sister, my great aunt Frances, she got out as a corporal. She served Korean War time frame. And then we've got a great uncle Cole and a Mahoney. And so it goes back quite a few generations. So it's certainly in the blood. And I actually attempted to sign up for the Marine Corps when I was 9 years old. I was begging and pleading my mom. I was telling my mom, you got to take me up there. I got to get signed up. I don't want to miss out on my opportunity. So she took me to the recruiting station and at 9, and they said, all right, you gotta wait a couple more years. Come on back when you're 16. We'll get you in delayed entry program. So I did, and did all the testing and all that fun stuff. And the only thing I didn't qualify for after the ASVAB was military intelligence. I just didn't do very well on the Morse code portion. So I basically had my choice of anything I wanted to do. The goal was to be an F4 or F-18 pilot. So it tells you my dates of service back in that time frame, F4s and A4s and all that fun stuff. And so I said I want to work as an aircraft mechanic, air traffic controller, or air crew. So those were the choices that I provided to the recruiter, and he said, well, we need air traffic controllers. So that's what the Marine Corps selected me for. So I went off to boot camp in '88, was one of only 3 enlisted Marines. We had female Marine, me, and another Marine that got to go to the air traffic control school in NAS Millington, Tennessee. So did that, and certainly enjoyed becoming an air traffic controller. Mostly spent most of my time as a tower air traffic controller, fully certified, tower watch supervisor, all the other positions. Got the chance to go out to CACs 1 through 3, 1991. Or I'm sorry, 90. And then later on that year, we deployed for Desert Storm. So, being an air traffic controller in a combat zone, getting shot at with some Iraqi frogs, free rockets over ground, that was always interesting. Got that for about 2 weeks and wound up rupturing a disc in the process. So didn't really understood what was going on. I just, really couldn't use my left leg after that. And just kept being a pain, literal pain in the bottom. So when I got back, I just started PTing harder, living on an Emerald Isle, North Carolina. It just kept working out harder and harder, which was making it worse and worse. So wound up getting some surgery while I was in the Marines at Camp Lejeune Naval Hospital. And then they just medically retired me out. So right before that, my CO of Marine Air Traffic Control Squadron 28, he recommended me for the MESEP program, which is what I was gunning for. That's a Marine Enlisted Commissioning Program. So that means I could have gone to school as a sergeant. That would have been my job. And I was planning on going to Embry-Riddle or NC State or something like that. And then they said, nah, you got to medically retire out. So wound up going to NC State instead. So having said all that, it's just neat. It's neat to carry on the family tradition, being a Marine. Also, all of us are all war veterans as well.
Yeah, I could definitely, relate to that. My grandfather served in World War II. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. And then my great uncle died. He was a Marine. He died in Iwo Jima on the second day. My other grandfather served in World War II, Korea and Vietnam. He ended up dying of Agent Orange complications. I I don't think I have any family members, Vietnam War era. My stepdad was Desert Storm, and
Okay.
then myself was OIF.
Okay.
So being in the blood, and then my son Jordan, he's Navy Seabee now, and then my son Chris is a Army Ranger.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's it continues, my friend. It continues.
Yeah, it does. I don't know. My wife's also currently serving with the Army National Guard, North Carolina Army National Guard. She's a 449th Combat Aviation Brigade commander. So
Oh,
you know,
wow.
I'm a sergeant, Marine Corps sergeant, and she's a Army National Guard colonel. So
Wow.
right. Obviously, we met after
Yeah, for sure.
So it's pretty neat. You know, we have kids. We got younger boys, 13, 10, and 8. So, you know, we have that conversation. Do you think our boys will go in? And our oldest son, when we had our last ultrasound with him, clear as day, you can see the hand up like that. And it's not sucking a thumb. He had a perfect salute. I was like, man. I don't think so. I don't. So if they do, that's great. If they don't, that's fine too.
Yeah, I just didn't want them to be medics. So that was my big thing. Like, you can join the military for school or for whatever you want, but you know, you can't be medics. So Jordan's a CB, and Chris is a 13 Fox, which is the shoot fire down range, basically, like call in for fire and stuff. But I also wanted to talk to you about Vet Carolinas. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. So I joined the North Carolina Department of Labor Veterans Apprenticeship Training. I became their Western North Carolina State coordinator for that. So we were working a whole bunch of programs and making sure that we were in touch with military veterans about being able to use their GI Bill for apprenticeship and on-the-job training opportunities. So had made quite a few military connections down in the Charlotte area. My wife and I married in 2004, so moved from the Raleigh area, Burlington area, down to Charlotte, and started making those connections. And as we were making those connections again back in 2004, 5, 6 timeframe, what we were noticing in the community is that each veteran organization operated kind of in a silo. Occasionally they'd have some mutual opportunities, but you know, you got big USO of North Carolina. We had Carolina's Freedom Foundation. That was another organization that had long-standing ties. And then the standards, veterans of foreign wars, Vietnam veterans, right, et cetera. So they were all kind of operating independently. And what I was noticing is that their activities sometimes overlapped each other. So as I was having conversation back then with some of the leaders in the vet space, but also in the corporate space, that kept developing. And our goal was to try to get to a community calendar or an opportunity where we could support each other, especially as the growth of employee resource groups or SRGs, business resource groups, were starting to come up in some of these organizations. So after my wife did her tour in Iraq, 2008, 2009, went back to work full time, wound up going to Queen's University and get my MBA. Again, kept seeing the same trend. You know, like Queen's wanted to start up a student veterans organization. UNC Charlotte was spinning theirs up as well. So just all these separate work streams, you know, and military is supposed to be known, regardless of which branch or service, if we're all joint, we're all purple, whatever, we should be able to figure this out. We should be able to provide a unified proposal pitch instead of stepping on each other, particularly when it comes to fundraising. So after Belmont Abbey College, I moved over to Duke Energy and helped them stand up their employee resource group. It's called Together We Stand. So we created that group, and then I used that horsepower of Duke Energy Corporation, which is a big multi-billion-dollar organization. So when I started emailing people, they're paying a little bit more attention because they know Duke's got money. So, and they also have a big foundation. They could potentially help those organizations. So when I reach out to the veteran groups, reach out and say, hey, send me your events. So they're like, oh, wow, Duke Energy is now interested. And it's like, no, it's me. I'm interested because I want to share this information so that the veteran organizations can stop stepping on each other. And I kid you not, just a couple of years ago, it was in September, it was like 4 separate golf tournaments, all military veteran related, all in Charlotte, all on the same day.
No
We're
way.
like, you guys are killing the corporate groups, you know? So we're having these conversations with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Time Warner Cable, then Carolina's healthcare system, then now Atrium Health, saying, how do we pull all this stuff together? How do we unify some of these efforts? How do we make sure that everybody knows what's going on so we stop stepping on each other? So we wound up creating carolinasveterans.org. So that website is actually paid for by an Army veteran who created Task Force Capital. Brandon Shelton is his name. So he funds the site. He wound up getting one of his veterans who is really getting into website building, another Army veteran, to create carolinasveterans.org. And then I populate it. So the interesting thing about that arrangement is that there's no one veteran group that gets precedent over any other. There's no corporation that gets precedent over any others. So, you know, all this stuff is occurring in the background. And then, if you recall, a couple of years ago, Charlotte had some riots. It was about 3 years ago. So the CEO of Atrium Health, Gene Woods, one of the executive vice presidents from Bank of America, and another executive vice president, Brent Carter, and Novant. So Novant is our competitor in this space. They all got together and they said, we need to unify our efforts to look out for the community to create One Charlotte. So when they said One Charlotte, we said One Charlotte Vets. So that way we could become the action arm behind the scenes, doing stuff between our different corporations. And that was basically the startup of Vet Carolinas. Then we got, I won't say that we got formal with it, but we, you know, got about 156 different corporations, employers, et cetera, in the area, came together and had votes. And I happened to be selected as the first volunteer president of that organization. So again, the intent is for all of us to know what's going on, be able to share information between each other so that we can avoid stepping on each other, but also make sure that it's not just one group that's doing a thing on a weekend. There may be other activities outside this area. So if you consider like Bank of America, they take up a pretty large footprint across the country. They can't just focus on Charlotte just because of headquarters here. Even for Atrium Health, you know, we're spread out in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia now. So we might be Charlotte centric, but that's not really going to help our Georgia market. So how do we best support each other in that fashion? Let's just focus on the Carolinas. So, and then we'll help Georgia deploy whatever we got to do to help them get to that same space.
Yeah, good for you, Aaron, for quarterbacking that whole initiative. And
there's a lot of partners. I wouldn't take credit for any of that. It's just, hey, we're all working together. We got the same mission.
Yeah,
one team, one mission, right?
Right on, man.
Good, man. You're helping a lot of people with that. Talk briefly about what did you get out of the military? Like, how did that make you a better person? What did you learn from that? Your character traits that you came away with that you feel helped set you up for success on the civilian side when you came out?
Well, obviously the Marine Corps is by far the most finest service known to mankind. Right? Why are you laughing? So we all know the truth. Best uniforms, it's, you know, best service.
Best uniforms, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we got that chime in there. You know, you learn all the standard stuff. I think all the branches of service teach the same stuff. I think there's more of a heavy focus on our history in the Marine Corps. So we know about all those who have fought and died for us. So that level of camaraderie through Semper Fidelis is pretty strong, and it always is. You know when you're going to run into a Marine because they got the sticker and they got the tattoo and they got all that fun stuff. Guaranteed you're going to hear that they're a Marine too. So it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm a Marine. Okay, got it. So all those character traits that all the branches of service help instill. But the interesting thing being an air traffic controller is when you're an air traffic controller, you're talking to a whole bunch of different aircraft at the same time. They move at different speeds. They're coming in from different directions. They're trying to do different things. They might be just transiting the airspace. They might be coming in for a low approach. They're coming in for a landing, whatever it is. And they all have different requests too. So if you think about that, there's just constant movement at different speeds and different priorities and different needs. And that directly relates to, say, for example, what I'm doing now as an HR strategic business partner. We've got different leaders that are making different requests at different speeds and priorities. So it's very similar to that. So you're constantly tracking each one of those pieces. How do I best care for this? What happens when you have in air traffic control, you'd say I have a coded flight. So, if you had code 1, that the president's coming in. If you got code 2, vice president, and it works its way on down as far as the general officer structure goes. So the same thing in the business partner space. When I was working in Belmont Abbey as a grant writer, some of those some of the grants that we were submitting out had different priorities as well. And sometimes you get a request in from the president of the college, and sometimes it was just standard stuff, little and big. So it's neat to have that opportunity to be able to continue to be an air traffic controller, so to speak, just by using some of those resources and the training and education that I got there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you got a question for him?
Yeah, so my wife works at Atrium. She loves Atrium. She's been working at Atrium, I think since like 2018. She works for the Levine Cancer Institute now.
Yeah, incredible organization.
And I'm sorry?
They're incredible organization, phenomenal staff, just way above board.
Yeah, they're fantastic. She really enjoys her job. Not that she didn't enjoy working for Atrium in general, but I think she really loves, the LCI. Sure. And I think that just Atrium in general is a great career path for a lot of veterans out there. I was a combat medic. I don't want to go back into healthcare. I saw enough of, that kind of scene.
Sure.
So, but other veterans out there that aren't me, I think that they're going to see that, that healthcare is it's a great industry to get into. It's not going away. That's for sure. So I'd love to hear more about, Atrium, what you've done there. I know that you've had some different roles at Atrium. So if you could talk more about, your roles that you've had in Atrium, and then on top of that, why you think healthcare is maybe a good career path for some veterans out there looking for work.
Oh, sure. It's been interesting because we have some folks in talent acquisition or recruiting, as most people would call it, that are, they're really interested. They're passionate about trying to help military members, veterans, and their families come on board, just like anybody else. But there's that extra little bit of passion. Of course, it doesn't hurt us that Gene Woods, our CEO, his dad was a Navy sailor, so he's passionate about it for a personal reason, and he's always been super supportive as a result. And some of our national level awards that we've wound up getting, he's right there. Our executive vice president, chief people officer, Dr. Jim Dunn, he's got a nephew that's just joined. I think he's actually going through SEAL training right now. So it's really neat to have that type of support, and that it works its way on down, and it's not top driven. It's each person, a wide variety of folks have their different reasons for wanting to support the military. So when I came on board to help develop the military veterans affairs strategy 5-6 years ago, you're just reaching out and finding out, what do you got going on right now? All right, let's try to pull all that together and generate the strategy. So like any good hospital system or military group, we had to have an acronym for it. So initially it started out as MVAS, which is Military Veterans Affairs Strategy. And then we switched it over to PATHS. So it would provide you with better guidance as to what the strategy is. So PATHS, patients, teammates, healthcare programs, and support. So community support. So obviously everything that we do at Atrium, doesn't matter what your job is, you're going to be focused in on patients. Even if you have no touch whatsoever, your job is to figure out how to best care for patients by supporting others or direct care. Then we also have some specialized military programs that take place at CMC with the USSOC, U.S. Army Special Operations Command, where we've got some of their clinical folks at our system, and they're there full time. Yep, there's I don't know how much I can share. Some of it's confidential, but there's about 40 Army clinicians. That's doctors, surgeons, APPs, nurses, SOCMs, Special Operations Combat Medics, surge techs, et cetera, that are there, and that's their duty station for 3 years.
Get
and then
out of here, Aaron. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that took a lot of work and finagling on the part of Dr. Dave Calloway, who's one of our emergency department doctors, chief of sustainability crisis operations, former Navy doctor, served with the Marines over in Iraq. So he and I just piggyback and trying to make this thing work, make sure we're checking all the blocks, so that way we could onboard some of these folks. But at the same time, we're looking at apprenticeship opportunities for surge techs out of the military. So take the surge tech out of the military, get them converted over. That way you can use the GI Bill apprenticeship program if they choose to do that. So those are a couple of the clinical pieces. Obviously the clinical, I don't want to say it's easy, but we got some phenomenal doctors, nurses, et cetera. Those are our two biggest populations of military veterans that are working at Atrium Health, are doctors and nurses, which could intimidate the average veteran that's getting out of service. So they're like, I'm not healthcare. Why should I come work for you? And so if you stop the person and say, we are Atrium Health, we are a healthcare system. As soon as you say system, you're basically saying to them, any job that exists in the military, there's a counterpart inside the healthcare system, whether it's IT or administration or operations, logistics. You just have to figure out what the naming convention is. So for on the logistics side, we know the word logistics. For us at Atrium Health, it's called materials management. So once you can connect those dots for the veteran, it helps them understand, okay, where do I need to apply to? Because they don't have any logistics jobs. Yeah, we do. Materials management. Right. Let's talk about fleet instead of, transportation. So if you can provide that linkage for the folks, if you can provide some of that language for our own hiring leaders, then you can help them on board. And a nice thing that we were recently able to do for our talent acquisition team, again, recruiting, just over the past couple of years, we were able to add a flag to the application process. So say for you, for example, I understand you're not going to go into clinical space, but say you want to get into some operational role, or you see something great at Atrium, at LCI, Levine Cancer Institute, and you hit apply. While you're going through that application process, it's going to ask you specifically for your work experience. Then it's going to ask you for your military experience. And then there's another check. Do you have this type of experience from military or service, et cetera? If you're checking all those blocks and you meet all the minimum requirements, then some of our team are alerted to that. And then they'll alert the hiring leader to say, hey, you've got an interested military candidate who meets all the minimum qualifications. Can you take a look? And it doesn't necessarily mean that the military member is going to get an interview, but it puts them to the top.
Right.
It brings them up to the top. So, and it's based on the percentages, like there's 10 specific questions that have to be answered in a particular fashion, MBA, BA, whatever it is, this type of experience, certification, et cetera, and military veteran. And as a result, the military veteran is the only group that can score 100% on that application. So it's pretty neat. And a lot of the recruiting that we do is word of mouth. We have our own recruiters that do get out there, Monster, and there's some other relationships that I believe that we've had or have, and great relationship with Veterans Bridge Home, NC Service, a lot of different groups like that, Charlotte area veterans employment, North Carolina for military employment. So great relationships that we've got there. And then just recently with COVID, Dr. Calloway said, let's look at our military medics. Let's look at the military medics. Let's try to leverage their experience. Let's work with the state, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and then also the Office of Emergency Medicine. And there's a lot of conversation across the state to try to recognize military service so that they could expedite their onboarding process to get them North Carolina certifications very quickly. So we tested it, and we had one of the SWIC guys out in California who's got all his combat medic stuff. He applied, and within 2 hours, he was North Carolina certified. So that means that we could pull him into the system and use him in a wide variety of services, everything from community paramedicine, EMT, standard cut, stuff like that. Right. But, we also understand that there's, like my job's not air traffic control. It's not officially air traffic control, even though it sort of is. We understand that there's folks that are going to get out of service and don't want to have anything to do with their MOS. So early on with talent acquisition, they were saying, well, how do we match up all these MOSs to potential job codes? And I said, you can. Kaiser Permanente does a phenomenal job. They put some serious money into it. So you could go add your MOS 11 Foxtrot. You can put that into their job site search, and behind the scenes it'll say what is an 11F. 11F, or say for my wife, 15 Bravo. Okay, no, it'll define that that's an Army helicopter pilot. Then behind the scenes, it'll say, hey, healthcare system recruiting, do you have any pilot positions open? Oh, you do? Okay, here it is. So as soon as you enter that in, behind the scenes, all this tech takes place, and magically it'll say, here's all of your job openings right now, because you're a 15 Bravo or me 7312 for air traffic control. It would be nice to be able to do that. But again, if you don't want to do that anymore, it's not really helping you out.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah, that
Aaron,
makes sense.
Sure.
what advice would you have for veterans, whether recently transition vets or vets who have been out, who want to go into healthcare? But although the advice could be for any industry, it doesn't have to be healthcare. What are some of your like favorite tips or suggestions or pitfalls for these men and women when they're in their job hunt mode, when they're trying to impress people like you and other talent acquisition recruiters? What could they do that could give them a little bit of an advantage?
Well, what I've seen over the past few years, there's definitely a challenge there. I know that all the branches have their version of a TAP, Transition Assistance Program. Army's got Army Career Alumni Program. They all have to go through that process, and a lot of them, folks that I've run across, they're just trying to get EAS'd as fast as possible or retire. So they're not really focused on that. And some of the times, unfortunately, the folks that are working with them, providing that level of education through the TAP program, may have been retired from the military and have no corporate experience. So when it comes to that resume build, you're not really getting good advice. So there's been too many times where I'll take a look at an application that's coming through, and guy, girl, whatever, they're really highlighting that they were explosive ordnance disposal, and staff sergeant and all this kind of hua stuff and everything, and you're like, I appreciate you, I appreciate your service, but from a corporate perspective, I don't ever want to have an explosive ordnance disposal person working at Atrium Health, because then that means we have explosives that we have to deal with, and I don't want that. We got to figure out how to do that translation. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they've done Hire Heroes. They've got some really neat GWiz kind of stuff. I would push people through that. So just go use folks that are in the corporate sector that can truly help you. And we've got ambassadors that can do that as well inside Atrium. So, hey, you're Army, you did this. All right, let's see if we can find Army that's done that as well to help you build out your resume correctly. The other key thing is, in the military, unless you're really getting up high in the ranks where you're having to do some interviews or whatever, military doesn't do interviews, right? Why would you do an interview? I moved from private or recruit, poolee, moved all the way up to sergeant and never had an interview, other than the occasional monthly Marine NCO or something like that, and you get quizzed. But there's no interview to get to corporal or sergeant. There may be a little bit once you get higher up in the ranks. So the problem is a lot of veterans don't know how to sell themselves. So taking yourself out of the we mindset, unit, mission orientation, task orientation. I got to do this with my unit. Let's figure it out. Let's be can go, gung ho, figure it all out, and then try to bring that back to the corporate sector. And they're like, no, you're applying for this one job, and this is the thing that you're expected to do. And now you're in this job and you're trying to do all this other stuff. Well, that's not your job. And then people get mad at them. So it's like hone in on your passion and what you're qualified to do. Can't tell you how many times that we've had applicants that will apply for vice president and assistant vice president jobs inside Atrium, where it's like we're asking for a brain surgeon, and you get a Marine Lance Corporal who'll say, well, I read the job description, I think I can do that, apply. And then they're like, I didn't get selected for that vice president and brain surgery role. So I'll apply to clean rooms instead. So it's this really shotgun type of approach. I need a job, hurry up, let me get a job. And that doesn't help them at all. So you really got to focus in on something that you're passionate about. And then make sure that you're qualified to do the job. Folks are going to run into that problem every day in Charlotte, the Charlotte market, really any market. If you're not qualified to do it, you're going to have a hard time doing it. And this piece of advice for the folks that are still serving, please make sure to get your degree. Please make sure if you've got certifications that you've gotten inside service, make sure that they get translated out through the COOLS program or whatever program that you want to use. Make sure that that stuff gets translated out so that you're prepared to demonstrate what you've done in service as it relates to the corporate sector. And you have all the qualifications to do it. Cannot tell you how many times I've run across an E8 or E9 that doesn't have a bachelor's degree and they're applying for basic jobs inside Atrium Health. And there's too many times when the basic requirement education-wise is a bachelor. And, I know that they can do the job, but that's a disqualifier if you don't have that. So take advantage of the educational opportunities that you got in the military. Use a GI Bill, whatever you got to do, stop. And then also get your mind reset on setting your expectations. You got to set your expectations correctly. If you're a brigade commander and you're in charge of 1,000, 2,000 troops, you cannot automatically assume that you would come to Atrium and be in charge of 1,000 to 2,000 employees. It's certainly doable. I believe in their leadership skills and all that they've done. It's certainly doable. But if you flip that, if I have a vice president, they're responsible for 2,000 people inside Atrium Health, and I say, hey, it's equivalent to a colonel. Hey, Army, make him a brigade commander. And what do you think the Army's going to say to that? No, you can't be a brigade commander. You don't have the experience and leadership. It's the same thing on when you come out here. Yep. So set your expectations. Make sure you got qualifications, degrees, etc. Get all that stuff lined up before. Don't come to your network, your military veteran network, at the last second saying, I need a job. Start looking at least 6 months to a year out. See what's out there and see what you need to get qualified for.
I like that advice because I've never heard that before, because a lot of times I see veterans coming out of the military transition and they're just in this mad rush to get a job, and they end up taking a job that they maybe spend 5 minutes thinking about before. But if you just go get your degree, then you can really determine what would be the best path for you,
Sure.
Jay, you got one more question for Aaron?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, I really resonate with that. So I'm almost done with my master's now. I got my bachelor's with the GI Bill. Voc Rehab's generously given me my master's in communications. I cannot stress that enough, that education really is key, in the civilian world. But, I was a civilian for a long time before I joined the mill. I was 26 before I joined. So I was swimming in the civilian pool for quite a while. Sure. But I think that's really good advice. People need to take advantage of the educational benefits that's available to them for being in the military. I certainly did. And it's worked out well for me. And I think people should, really see what's out there. So I really appreciate your time today, Aaron. You've been great.
Yeah, Aaron,
my pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share your story and give this incredible advice to veterans coming behind you. That means a lot to us that you're sharing, and you're the type of guy we love to get involved in our family, and the opportunity to help you with anything you need is always, and any other veteran is always very important to us. But we thank you so much. And
definitely leverage the network. If you're doing the LinkedIn thing, you're coming to Charlotte, look up Charlotte, Marine Corps, and you'll see all the folks that'll show up, or whichever branch of service it is, or whichever city that you're going to. Leverage that network, put it to use.
And to jump on a call or whatever. That's what I love about your community. So thank you very much, Aaron. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.